long overdue, but it's time for my 2019 STi review. If you're wondering whether this is my 2019 STi, it's not. It's my 2021 STi, but I kind of want to catch you up to what happened with the 19 STi before we get into the 2021 and why I went back to the STi. So if you've been following the channel for quite some time, I mean, you'll know that I had a 2018 WRX, and then right around 20-ish thousand miles, it started causing me problems a little bit. But I really wanted the STi, wanted to try out the STi, and so I went ahead and bought it. And never really did a proper review on it, and what exactly happened during that time frame, me driving about 50,000 miles on it. So I did buy it brand new, went to the dealership, picked it right off the lot. I mean, car had 9 miles on it, started driving it. I really took care of it, I mean, like nothing else. The car drove remarkably. It was, I mean, hands down one of my all-time favorite cars that I've ever owned up until that point. And I gotta say, I mean, I just had a great time with it. I mean, a lot of the stuff transferred over from my WRX, like I had a Remark exhaust. The car sounded insane. But to be honest, I mean, I never even launched the car, right? So, I mean, I always drove it. You know, every once in a while, I mean, you do step on the gas a little bit, but it wasn't an abusive type of relationship by any means. It was a car, honestly, that I thought that I was just gonna keep forever. At about the 20-ish thousand mile mark, the car really started showing some problems, primarily with burning oil. And so, I mean, I knew the STi was gonna burn oil regardless. I mean, it's not like something I wasn't expecting. So every 1,500 miles or so, I would fill it up with about a quart and just kind of move on. But at the same time, you know, talking to some of my friends that had STIs before, a lot of them were saying this is kind of an unusual amount of oil burning, especially considering they knew very well how I drove the car, and it's, you know, it's never been tracked. Just, I mean, just as I'm driving this one right now, just a nice, calm kind of pace, and the car was still showing signs of that it could potentially need a new engine. So I started going to the dealership and started complaining about the engine. You know, of course, the first thing they checked is make sure it was never tuned, and it never was. And then we went back and forth for a few times, them telling me that, you know, the STIs burn more engine oil than normal, but, you know, they'll keep a look at it. So at about 30,000 miles, that's when the first time the check engine light came on. And it honestly was because it burnt through so much oil, and this was within 1,000 miles, that it literally, I mean, I honestly, at this point, I don't even remember everything that kind of got messed up on it, but I do remember that one of the first fixes that they wanted to implement was changing out the sprockets. Now, of course, the sprockets themselves, conveniently, are not under warranty, and so you have to fork up, and you got to change one at a time. You can't just change out all 4 at the same time. There was then some, you know, oil sensors, you know, on the one side and on the other side. They got to go through that entire process, and every single time I drive at about 500-600 miles, either check engine light came on, or the oil was so low that I was just constantly filling it up, constantly kept driving it back to Subaru to see where the process was. So finally, at about 45,000 miles of me going back and forth nonstop, I mean, the amount of times the car was at the dealership was remarkable at that point. I finally came to one of 2 conclusions. Either I'm just not going to care anymore, take that engine out and do a fully built block, heads, I mean everything, or I'm going to trade it in and get something a little bit different that I haven't got before and drive it for about a year. And if in about a year I still felt exactly the same, I was going to come back and purchase another one. like I said, I mean, the driving experience was nothing like I've ever driven before. So I mean, I was addicted to the STi experience, but at the same time, I figured, let me see, I'll just do a 1-year break. Let me get away from it. If within still that a year period I want it, I'll come back to it. And that's exactly what happened. So I took it in, traded it in. At that time, I mean, it was the height of COVID, and so all the cars were missing, and I ended up getting a really good trade-in value, which I was shocked that it had 50,000 miles, and I got nearly $34,000 for it, considering I paid $36,900 for the car. It was pretty good. And so the one thing that I didn't foresee, for whatever reason, same time that my car was in demand, so was every other one. And the only one that I really wanted was, like I said, to go completely on the opposite side of the spectrum. I wanted something just ridiculous, a massive truck that I've never owned before, but I always just kind of wanted. And so I ended up buying a 2022 GMC Sierra 2500 HD in an AT4 package. But of course, I called every single dealership prior to that, and nobody had it. Well, first of all, nobody had the AT4, nobody had the 2500, and especially nobody had it in the black, version that I wanted. And so at that point, I was without an STi, and I was driving my C6 Corvette again as my daily. Not a bad car, to be honest. I mean, I was having fun, but I was still on the lookout. I called quite a bunch of dealerships. A lot of them just laughed at me whenever I asked for that spec. But one of them was actually not that bad. It was this dealership called Capital Buick GMC. So the guy called me and said, hey, we just got the package exactly as you wanted. It's in. The guy ordered it, walked back out of the deal. It just came in. If you want it, it's yours. And literally, a middle of work, stopped doing everything, jump in the car with my wife, and we drive to the dealership. 10 minutes, I just glanced at the truck. It's exactly what I wanted, and I ended up buying it. And so at that point, I had this massive truck, and of course, had to put wheels on it, new tires, It already had a 2-inch lift on it, but I worked on it to the point where it was exactly the way that I wanted it. And that truck was awesome. I mean, I'm still, semi-regretting selling it. There's a Subaru right in front of me, the MK4. That's interesting. Sorry, got a little sidetracked. Let's see if we can pull up next to him, if we can see him. Yeah, I think that's it. Yep, he was in the shot. So again, I mean, it was one of those vehicles that we enjoyed driving. I mean, it was so ridiculously big, and I would take it through like downtown Atlanta, squeeze through all the roads. Had a blast, just a different type of driving experience. My son, he absolutely loved it. He even said, he's like, hey, Dad, can we put on the back, just say bad boy? And while I thought it was funny, and cute from his part, I mean, there's no way I could drive around with bad boy on the back of the truck. And like I said, we had a blast with that truck. About a year in, I really started missing that STi. I start missing the manual transmission. And I decide, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and see what are they going to give me as a trade-in value again for the truck, and see if I can get an STi. First thing I do is, of course, contact a few people. I mean, I paid $72 for the truck, and first place I go to, CarMax, they offered me the biggest lowball offer that I've ever seen. And I was honestly quite surprised, especially considering before the STi that I traded in to CarMax. So I tried a couple other places, and they were even worse, to be honest. Finally, I tried as well with Carvana. Carvana came back. It was better, to be honest, but it was not great. So I just told my wife, I said, you know, I think we're going to keep the truck for a while. I think this is a sign to just go ahead and keep it. And so I was pretty much set on just keeping it as long as I need to, up until I feel somehow justified with the vehicle. And then a couple of weeks after, Carvana comes back and says, hey, we got a new offer for you. Click here. And so I click on it, and it's at $71,000, which is literally $1,000 less than I paid, and it already had 19,000 miles on it. So couldn't pass up on the deal. Went ahead and sold it to Carvana. I probably could have gotten a little bit more if I would have done private, you know, seller, but to be honest, at that kind of price point, I just wanted to be nice and quick and clean with it. And at the end of the day, who had the STi that I wanted? Again, it was actually Carvana. And so that's the one that I'm driving in right now. This is a 2021 STi Limited, which I was honestly surprised some of the upgrades that it actually had, you know, outside of the Recaro seats and, for example, the push button start, which I was honestly surprised that you can't just get that as an option on any of the other models. The other thing was, and I mean, like I said, if you would have followed me, you would have seen the extent that I went to just get rid of all of the rattling in that car. In this one, I'm right at 21,000 miles right now. I bought it right at 10. No rattles, thankfully, but if it ever does start rattling, I'm going to go ahead and do the same stuff I did on my 2019. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. 2019 STi was a great vehicle. I mean, I had this massive list of upgrades that I was going to do to it. I'm honestly kind of glad that I sold it and then got this one, because this one is not burning oil, and you know, it's still under warranty for a little bit. So I mean, I'm still not going to be doing too much stuff to it just yet, but as soon as I get out of warranty, which should be October of this year, at that point, going back to my list of upgrades that I want to do, I'm actually contemplating of just taking this engine out completely, putting in a completely different, fully built engine into it, and then if I ever want to switch back, I still have that STi original engine that I can just pop back in at any point. Another real interesting development that's happened over the past couple of weeks, and of course I'll be sharing that with you guys as well, is that just bought a 2017 GTR Nismo, and you know we're going to be reviewing that one. Look out for a couple more videos from me very soon. Definitely one on the 2021 review, and then on the 2017 Nismo as well. See you guys next time.